But tonight, I'm going to be talking about something a little different. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about hypothyroidism. And there's a lot of confusion about it. And there was someone on TikTok live stream talking about eating for your blood type. And apparently, because people keep asking me about this in the stream, like, oh, how do you feel about eating for your blood type? And I'm like, why is it that people keep asking me about this? Like, what's going on with people keep asking me about eating for a blood type? And so apparently there's a lady who, I guess she streams on TikTok, and she's selling products, and she's got a eat for your blood type book or whatever that she follows, and so she's a big advocate of that kind of thing. And she was saying things about iodine and the thyroid and how cabbage and broccoli are bad for your thyroid. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll talk about it then, right? Because I got some things to say about that. Now, people tend to say, don't eat this food, or eat this food. This food is good for this food is bad for that, blah, 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 right? And people say, well, if you have hypothyroid, you want to consume iodine, right? So spinach is good, things like that. Seaweed, nori, that's good. Sea moss, that kind of thing. People stress iodine. Chromium, right? Chromium is good for your thyroid, that type of thing. And people have these. But people never really talk about what actually causes hypothyroid in the first place. And you have to talk about that. Now, there's a variety of different, well, there's not really a whole lot of a variety of different things that cause hypothyroidism. There's two things. Number one, you can have an autoimmune disorder that people refer to as Hashimoto's disease. And this is in a high level of antibodies that attack the thyroid and actually damage the thyroid. And this inhibits T4 production from the thyroid, right? That's one. Then there is the high TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone, with low T4, which is the thyroid hormone that your thyroid produces the most of. Yes, she does, and take a real close look at her. Take a close look at her BS at it. I got diagnosed with this 4 months ago. All right, well, I'm going to talk about it tonight. Now, the root of hypothyroidism is stress. Okay? I did a video earlier on my TikTok explaining what I mean by that. There's a specific pathway, or several pathways, or one long pathway that this acts on. So, step number one, chronic stress. Now, previously on a I think the previous stream or the stream before that, I talked about the stress inflammation escalation ladder, right? And how it's color coded: green, yellow, orange, red, right? So, you get stressed, your body causes an inflammatory response. Well, the stress causes an inflammatory response, which is pretty much any activation of your immune system. So when you get stressed, your stress increases, inflammation meets the stress. It brings you into the yellow, you get more stressed, you're in the orange, more inflammation, right? So this is where you start traveling upward on the stress inflammation escalation ladder, right? So what happens is, one of the stress responses is your body releases cortisol from your adrenal glands, right? cortisol is a stress hormone that is activated by stress. And when I say stress, it can be any kind of stress. It can be stress from poor eating habits. It can be stress from poor sleep quality. It can be stress from losing your job. It can be stress from being in a marriage with somebody you can't stand. It can be stress from being surrounded by coworkers you don't like. It can be all type of stuff, right? But the type of stress that I'm talking about is chronically elevated stress. Stress that's very high on a very consistent basis, which causes a constant release of cortisol. So your cortisol levels are very elevated on a very consistent basis. And elevated cortisol levels will also drive up your blood sugar and keep your blood sugar very elevated, which also contributes to diabetes. So what happens is chronic cortisol a lot of the times will raise your A1C score. And it's not necessarily because you're insulin resistant necessarily. A lot of the times if you get chronically elevated cortisol, you do become insulin resistant over time. But insulin resistance and elevated cortisol are very closely related because your A1C score is a measure of your average blood sugar. Right? And so what happens is the cortisol skews the number because cortisol will elevate your blood sugar way more than your food should. So it's not even necessarily your food that's raising your blood sugar and keeping it elevated, but it's the cortisol. But in any ways, that cortisol is released. Now, another stress hormone, and the reason why this applies a lot to women, is estrogen production. So stress, cortisol, chronic cortisol. Your body will then deal with the cortisol by releasing more estrogen, right? Now, this estrogen incentivizes your body to store more body fat, right? So chronic cortisol means chronically elevated estrogen levels. Now, this burns out over time because eventually your body stops producing as much estrogen, and then you go through menopause, right? And then the estrogen kind of falls off a cliff. And then you're set up with a different set of problems after that. So what I'm talking about is the chronic release of estrogen in order to manage the stress and drive down the cortisol. Your body will actually try to regulate your cortisol release with estrogen as a counterbalance. Now, this increased estrogen becomes a problem because it leads to more production and increase from your liver of thyroxine binding globulin, right? So this is like a type of protein that's made in your liver. And the requirement for this is that estrogen, right? So that's the thing that makes this very, very sex related, where it applies to females more so than men, is that excess estrogen. So this protein then binds T4, your free T4 levels. So if you take a blood test and your T4 level looks low, the reason is because of that thyroxine binding globulin. Now, your body will sense the low T4, and as a thyroid to release more T4, a lot of the free T4 then gets bind up by this thyroid binding globulin as a result of the high estrogen, and then repeat. And that leads to more stress. Because the thing is that if you don't have that T4, then T3 conversion becomes very limited. So T4 is what is an inactive thyroid hormone. That T4 is supposed to be converted into T3, right, which happens in your liver mostly. A little bit happens in your thyroid, but mostly happens in your liver, right? Your kidneys also involved with this production as well. But most of it is on your liver primarily. Now, if you have limited free T4, then that will result in you having limited T3. If you have limited T3, this negatively affects your body's ability to take glucose and convert it into energy. So if you have a hypothyroid, you probably feel chronically fatigued, just tired all the time, gaining excessive weight, right? The primary things is chronic fatigue and weight gain, and some of it can be nausea and things of this nature, right? But a lot of it relates back to stress. So the stress leads to the cortisol, leads to the estrogen, leads to the T4 binding, leads to the limited T3, low energy, and then you eat more because you get more hunger cravings because you have lack of energy, etc. And it's this vicious loop that people can be in for years. Now, the common approach to this is take a medication, levothyroxine, right? This doesn't fix the problem. You just become dependent on this medication, right? But if you don't correct the stress that leads to the high cortisol, that leads to the high estrogen, that leads to the T4 binding, you won't really be able to lose the weight, because the medication is not enough to reverse the effects, right? It really just kind of slows down the weight gain and just helps out a little bit, but it doesn't fix the problem because the medication doesn't address the stress and the excess estrogen and cortisol, which is the main problem. Essentially, over time, this leads into insulin resistance and then can turn into type 2 diabetes. And then this can also be high blood pressure also. And high blood pressure is another indicator of excess cortisol. In addition to that, the excess estrogen helps to grow fibroids. So you get these growths in your uterus from excess glucose and estrogen that feeds the fibroids. And these things can grow up to the size of like a tennis ball. They can grow up to the size of a cantaloupe. These things can get huge. And you can have multiple of them, right? So fibroids, it can be like this hard mass in your uterus, right? And the only way to really fix that is to bring down your estrogen to a reasonable level and be able to increase insulin sensitivity so you stop feeding the fibroids. I don't want to make this whole thing about fibroids, but it's just I'm broadening out so you can see what the trend is, where one thing kind of leads to another, right? And so this happens with age. So by the time you're like 40, 45, 50, 55 years old, right, you end up with the fibroids that have grown large enough for you to really see it. Right, so you get the weight gain, and then you start to get the growth. Your blood pressure goes up. You can't really control the weight gain. You're tired all the time, and then when you're tired, you can't work out. Well, you don't have the motivation to work out. It's really hard, right? It's this vicious cycle that sends you on a downward trend, where it just gets worse over time. I'm not really saying it to scare anybody, but I'm just painting a picture of what happens. Some people say, and this is true, hey, iodine helps with the problem. It helps, but the problem isn't a lack of iodine. Most people don't really lack iodine in their diet. Right? I mean, you eat a few servings of spinach a day, you're fine. You eat some seaweed here and there, you're fine. Right? It's not that difficult to get iodine. I mean, we even have iodized salt. It's not that difficult to get iodine. The iodine is not really the problem. And then the same things that you get the iodine from is also the same thing you get the chromium from. And chromium is also good for your thyroid also. But your thyroid isn't the problem in this case. The problem is the stress and the cortisol, right? So the question then becomes, how do we lower the cortisol, right? First Queen, what's going on? I was about to message you in the Discord today too. I'm freezing? I hope not. Folks, put a 1 in the chat if I'm freezing. Is TikTok not his Wi-Fi? Well, I don't know. Let's say put a 1 in the chat if I'm freezing. I have fibroids along with hypothyroidism. There you go. The live is freezing. I take thyroid medication, high blood pressure. Blah. Freezing. Uh-oh. TikTok is doing the thing. Oh no. Yeah, I don't know. There's not really a whole lot I can do about it, about the freezing, because it's their network. Well, let me pick up where I left off. Hopefully, it's not too bad, and the freezing will chill out for a bit. So the cortisol, right? The stress. So in this bowl, I've got honeydew, I've got grapes, I've got apples, right? These are foods that help to lower cortisol. And the question is why? What lowers cortisol? Glucose, sugar lowers cortisol. Magnesium lowers cortisol. Potassium lowers cortisol. Vitamin C lowers cortisol. B vitamins lower cortisol. All of those things are found in these fruits, right? Polyphenols, carotenoids lower cortisols. Resveratrol, like what's in these grapes, lowers cortisol, right? Kiwis, bananas, cantaloupe lowers cortisol. You wake up first thing in the morning and you drink a cup of matcha and moringa tea. That lowers cortisol. Cucumber juice lowers cortisol. Salt lowers cortisol. Sodium lowers cortisol. Right? When it comes to weight gain from hypothyroidism, cutting calories is not going to do it. Oh, now I'm seeing a bunch of 1s popping up. That's like super late. How far back am I behind? How bad is this thing lagging? Is lagging that bad? Let me see. It's not me, it's all of TikTok. Oh, it's all of TikTok. Okay. So, one thing that really helps, well, first of all, here's what you don't do if you're gaining weight as a result of hypothyroidism. You don't go into steep calorie deficits, and then you don't combine that with intense work, with intense exercise. Steep calorie deficits or fasting and intense working out, that will make it worse. Because calorie deficits actually increase cortisol. Under-eating increases cortisol. So for example, when you wake up at first thing in the morning and you skip breakfast, and you do that on a consistent basis, you start eating at 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it drives your cortisol levels up. So one of the best habits you can have is you wake up first thing in the morning and you have breakfast. You wake up first thing in the morning and you have your teas. It could be matcha, moringa tea, it could be ginger tea, whatever the case is, but you have that tea first thing in the morning, that herbal tea. You can have ashwagandha first thing in the morning. Ashwagandha also helps to drive down the cortisol. And then you have, watermelon or cantaloupe, mangoes, things like this. And that also lowers cortisol, right? Stop skipping breakfast. You're not doing yourself any favors by doing that. Are these seeded grapes? No, they are not. These are not seeded grapes. Say your disclaimer, it will stop freezing. What does that mean? Do you have a live stream on IG or YouTube? I got the setup to start doing it. I just got to pick a time to do it. My brother, I'm going raw for the last 13 days. I'm going 21 days to start. I need help. Well, for sure, reach out. Hit the link in my bio. And, you can book a call with me through there. And we can get on a call and talk. Hash out the strategy. Oh, there are seeds in it, huh? Okay. I stand corrected. These are seeded grapes. All right. So do not skip breakfast. All right. Wake up first thing in the morning. You have some sweet, beautiful, juicy fruit. You have your tea beforehand, right? So tea, then your fruit. Then you can go out for a walk for 30 minutes, 45 minutes or so. Right? You can do 20 minutes of resistance band training, 30 minutes of resistance band training, or some yoga, whatever type of exercise you like to do, and then eat after that. Right? You can do coconut yogurt with a granola and flax and blueberries, sliced bananas, things like that. Another meal after that, you can do a fruit salad. You can do sliced cucumbers, spring mix, pistachios, hemp seeds, apple slices, grapes, kiwi, etc. Right? Mix it all in a fruit salad. You can have something like that. After that, you can have an avocado salad where you do like my taco salad recipe that I have up. Right? And do something like that. After that, you can have a couple mangoes or so, maybe a couple cups of cantaloupe, a smoothie. Right? You can do a papaya and mango smoothie. You can do something like that. Right? But you have these frequent meals throughout the day. So it could be like 4 or 5 meals throughout the day. They don't have to be huge. Each meal could be around 300-500 calories or something like that. And just spread them out throughout the day. And the reason for that is because each meal helps to drive down cortisol. So food can actually be a stress management tool. Right? The weight will start to come off once you bring the cortisol levels down to a low enough level. Right? Once the cortisol comes down, then you get more adrenal output, and then your estrogen gets proportionately balanced out with your testosterone, and then your T4 production and release from your thyroid becomes regulated. So your TSH levels will start to come down and your T4 levels will go up along with your T3 levels. That process happens when you reduce the stress. This reduces the cortisol. So there's all of these levels that then shift and rearrange and move around, and that's when the weight starts coming off. So you have to get into position first in order to reverse the hypothyroid and then start the weight loss process. So far, everybody who I've had that has hypothyroidism and even Hashimoto's, this has worked for them, this process. Where it's a bit counterintuitive when you eat more and then you're not cutting carbs and all of that. Because cutting your carbs will raise your cortisol levels. Okay? One of the reasons why that is because carbohydrate sources are where a lot of the serotonin comes from. So like bananas or mango or cantaloupe, for example, it's high in serotonin. or specifically tryptophan, right? So when you cut those foods, that's going to have a negative effect on your brain chemistry. Then the glucose causes endorphin and dopamine release, right? And then these fruits also have tyrosine in leafy greens as well. And that's what's needed to produce dopamine, which is the hormone that allows you to feel pleasure and motivation. It's the reward hormone, the currency of life. So when you're consistently eating food sources that contain the amino acids and minerals needed to create more serotonin, melatonin, dopamine, and endorphins, that right there is going to drive down the cortisol and regulate out your estrogen levels, and that's when things can start moving on the scale. You got to feel better first. If you feel run down, that's a sign. Sleep quality, because sleep quality is a big deal. Because you can eat great all day, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't sleep well. You can actually struggle to lose weight even if your diet is on point because your sleep quality is poor. Sleep deprivation will prevent you from losing weight. Right? Now, when you adopt a diet that facilitates good sleep quality, well, the chances of you having poor sleep is very low. You can still have poor sleep quality, but that depends on, like, if you got spinal injuries, if your bed is uncomfortable, if you have a lot of external stressors in your life, that kind of thing, right? But the food increases the likelihood of you getting better sleep quality. But sleep deprivation is a massive Achilles heel for a lot of people. So you have to do your best to protect your sleep quality. Sound therapy is one of those things that I'm really a big fan of. Like, you hear this meditation music and the running water. That's very good to listen to before bed, before you go to sleep. Having meals like this is very good for going to sleep right before bed. That ginger and turmeric tea or dandelion with a pinch of cayenne pepper, that's very good before going to sleep. Right? Dandelion and ashwagandha, that's very good for going to sleep. Having an essential oil diffuser with lavender oil, so that you're inhaling the lavender while you're lying in bed, dozing off with some dim lights, or just have it completely dark with the sound playing. That's very good to improve your sleep quality. Deep breathing exercises, that's another one. And you can implement all of those. Right? Hot shower, warm bath before bed. Epsom salt bath, that's another one before bed. All of these are really legitimate options in order to help improve your sleep quality. Improving your sleep quality is one of the biggest missing links to correcting this whole issue. Right? Folks, double tap the screen to like the stream. Is green tea alone considered breakfast? No, green tea isn't considered breakfast, no. Yeah, if you work a lot, you got to make sure you protect your mental health and your sleep quality. Is 6 hours a night good? Some people only need 6 hours. Are seedless grapes good for you? Yeah, seedless grapes are just as good for you as seeded grapes. The only time you would want seeded grapes is if, like, you wanted to use the seeds in order to create new grapes, in order to grow a grapevine. Burdock root, that's another one. Burdock is really good for increasing blood oxygen levels. Right? Burdock also helps with kidney function because of the increased oxygen intake. Also improves liver quality as well. It helps to reverse fatty liver. That's another one. Oh, chai tea before bed. That's another good one. The other day I bought chai powder. It's hard to get good sleep. Well, I'm telling you, you gotta make it your life's mission to figure that out. Learn what you got to do in order to get some good quality sleep. If you had a client who wanted to get a bodybuilding type body on this diet, how would you help them? Well, it depends, right? If that person is in good, so first of all, you actually have to set up for bodybuilding. So you can't have like pre-existing chronic health issues. It's just like I'm just gonna go straight into bodybuilding. It doesn't really quite work that way. But let's assume that you don't have any health issues. Your health is pretty fine, right? And you wanted to really just start bodybuilding, right? You wanted to chest day, back day, leg day. You wanted to get 3D delts, round cannonball shoulders, and all this, right? That's actually very simple to do, right? Even on like a high raw vegan diet, like what I'm a big proponent of, it's actually very easy to do, right? So you got your standard 1 gram to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of lean mass, 1 gram of fat per kilogram of lean mass, and then the rest is all carbohydrates. Your carbohydrate intake roughly should be 4 times your lean mass, or 3 to 4 times your lean mass, right? Are the general macros and guidelines for like a bodybuilding style of diet routine, right? If you want to stay lean while doing it, right, you want to limit fat and you want to limit fat gain as much as possible. You would have a carbohydrate dominant diet where you would stop eating roughly 3 to 4 hours before bed. You'd wake up earlier in the morning, and you have your most protein-rich meals earlier in the day. So you can have your first protein-rich meal around 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and then your second most protein-rich meal around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, somewhere around there. And you can stop eating around like 5 or so, and then be in bed by 9 o'clock, right? So guidelines like that, and then of course the training plan, right? I'm a big fan of resistance bands and body weight. It's easier. The plan that's going to build you the most muscle is the one that you can stick to, right? So if you're going to the gym or you're having trouble getting to the gym because of traffic, time, you don't have a whole lot of free time, so it limits the amount of time you can spend in the gym and all that. Well, if you train from home, it ends up being a lot easier to stay on plan. Right? And then as far as staying lean while building muscle, walking an hour a day, hour and a half a day, something like that, depending on your current body fat level. And there you go, right? So something along those lines. Vegan protein meals. A really good high vegan, a really good high protein meal. I mean, it's pretty easy. You could do chickpeas, extra firm tofu, hemp seeds, and avocado slices. That's a great meal. If that's too much fat, dietary fat for you, depending on your macros, you could do lentils, chickpea, and tofu with quinoa or basmati rice underneath. And then, of course, you pair that with a few cups of, let's say, steamed broccoli or cauliflower or cabbage or something like that, right? Some type of cruciferous green vegetable. So that's a good one. Another pretty good protein-rich meal would be like tempeh with pistachios, cashews, something along those lines. Or you can do like an oat pudding with pea protein powder in it, with peanut powder and cacao powder. That's another one. So, there's things like that. So it's actually very easy. I mean, you can eat 24 to 2600 calories a day and get in like 120 grams of protein a day. You can get in 140 a day, which is more than enough. You don't really need much protein, right? 1 gram a day, 1 gram of protein per kilogram is usually enough. Because in order to build muscle mass and improve muscle recovery, it's all about the carbs. So that carbs breaks down to glucose, gets stored inside the muscle tissue in the form of glycogen. So you get nice full muscle belly from all the carbohydrates, right? So you get more of a full muscular look when you increase your carbohydrates. So yeah, inflammation, right? It all goes back to the chronic, the stress inflammation escalation ladder, right? Is with the whole hypothyroidism thing. Stress management is the number one property. Same thing as like high blood pressure, right? Stress management, which means sleep quality. Almost every person that I talk to who struggles with really high blood pressure, they get really poor sleep quality. Right. So if you got high blood pressure, right, if you've got hypothyroidism, really take a look at your sleep quality and you'll notice, oh yeah, my sleep quality is terrible. If you got a Fitbit, you can wear your Fitbit to bed, or if you have an Oura ring, you can wear that, overnight while you're in bed, and it'll tell you your sleep score. Right? And the thing is, the reason why sleep quality is so important for something like fat loss is because oxygen intake is going to really peak at night when you're sleeping. Because your body burns the most fat at rest. This is why, like, the best form of cardio for fat loss is walking. It's actually not running. Running does not burn more fat. Because when you're running, the faster you run, the less oxygen you have. This is why you run out of breath. And if you have less oxygen as a result of running, then guess what? You're going to be burning less fat, and your body has to make up for that by burning more glucose. So you have aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic is when there's plenty of oxygen. Anaerobic is when there's very limited oxygen. Anaerobic activities burns the most amount of glucose. Aerobic burns the most amount of fat. So you'll see bodybuilders would rather walk than run, what they call steady state cardio, like recumbent bike or walking on a treadmill on an incline, things like that. And that's to basically preserve the glycogen storage in the muscle tissue while burning, like, let's say, body fat and love handles and all of that, right? Belly fat, etc. So there's the methodology with that. So the anaerobic exercises that you do is the resistance training. Resistance training is fairly anaerobic, right? Especially when you're doing powerlifting, deadlifts, back squats, and bench press and all of that. Because when you're doing a rep, you literally have to breathe in deep and hold your breath through each rep. And the longer the set goes, the less oxygen you end up having. You run out of breath. So you don't really need to pair anaerobic exercises with more anaerobic activity. So you should have a mix of aerobic and anaerobic, right, when it comes to your exercise routine. I have Graves' disease. I just watched a video you did for the opposite of what I have. Graves' disease also kind of is the same exact way, right? Just on opposite ends. So even with Graves' disease, it comes down to stress management. It just follows a different pathway, right? It's kind of like if somebody has an overactive thyroid or an underactive thyroid, they're both caused by the same thing. They just manifest differently, right? So you'll have, let's say, men who will have a hyperactive thyroid and be fatigued and tired all the time, and then losing all kind of weight and stuff and be lethargic and whatnot. The stress is still the main link there. It's just the hormones play differently. So I would still make the same suggestion where I would say, well, obviously you have to eat more, but you have to eat more foods that are going to drive down your stress and get better sleep quality, right? Also optimizing testosterone. So a little bit different, but even when it comes to optimizing testosterone, it still requires stress reduction for that. So when you increase, and I go back to the triad of human health: blood flow and blood quality, balancing the pH level and alkalides in your body, and the gut microbiome. When you improve blood flow and blood quality, you get increased oxygen intake, you get more free testosterone as a result. When you alkalize your body, right, you get more oxygen intake, and then you get a balancing of your thyroid and your pituitary gland, right? And then you also get improved liver function, which means improved testosterone and adrenal gland function. Ultimately, all of this aids to get you back into homeostasis. So, inflammation and stress will get you off of homeostasis. So, imagine like homeostasis is like a narrow pathway that you're walking through, right? And that narrow pathway is homeostasis. Now, if something comes and knocks you off of homeostasis, you fall off the path. You could fall off the path to the left or fall off to the path to the right. Right? Once you fall off the path to, like, let's say you fall off the path to the left, you could develop something like Graves' disease, which is viewed and diagnosed as an autoimmune disorder. And autoimmune disorders are directly a result of chronic inflammation that causes an overactive immune system that can then attack and damage the cells of, like, let's say, your thyroid. So really what has to happen is you got to bring down that immune system activity, and that's what gets the antibodies down to a normal level. And then you stop having those problems. Right? So, similar thing with Hashimoto's disease. There's not a whole lot of differences. There are very specific technical differences between them, but ultimately it's kind of the same thing. Right? They're all triggered by the same things. So yeah, in short, how do you reverse hypothyroidism? A raw vegan or high raw vegan diet, probiotic rich foods, papaya, mango, coconut, yogurt. You can do sauerkraut, kimchi, that kind of thing. Kiwis, bananas, mangoes, pineapple, right? Serotonin-rich foods or tryptophan-rich foods. You can do avocado, chickpeas, roasted cashews, pistachios, walnut chunks, foods like that, right? And you can have about 5 or 6 small meals a day. Avoid skipping breakfast, right? That's an important part. Do not skip breakfast. Eat until you're full. Don't worry about cutting your calories in order to try to lose weight. Your best exercise is going to be walking, walking an hour and a half or, an hour a day, and doing whatever you got to do to improve sleep quality. right? Those are some of the ways really that you reverse hypothyroidism, right? And then of course there's herbal teas and things like that: matcha, moringa, ginger, hibiscus, burdock. You can do sea moss. That's another good thing that would help also. So, but ultimately, stress reduction, having a stress reduction diet and lifestyle, deep breathing exercises, meditation is also a good practice, yoga, mobility exercises, and things like that to really loosen up your body. And also mind your posture, because the issue could also be in your posture. So let's say in your posture, your shoulders are very elevated, and then your neck is here like this. So your neck is like kind of short in the back and your shoulders are up. And then your spine is flexed, so you have a hunch. So you don't really have much curvature in your spine. That can really negatively impact your thyroid, because the thing is that you got your C-spine, and your C-spine is connected to your brain, pituitary gland, thyroid, lungs, right? Upper respiratory system. Your T-spine is connected to all of your gut organs. Adrenal glands, liver, pancreas, intestine, stomach, heart, things like that, right? And your lordotic curve, right, which is your L-spine, that's attached to the groin, reproductive system, lower gut, colon, rectum, etc., right? All that type of stuff. When you get better postural alignment in your spine, and then you stretch, you lengthen your spine, you fix your posture, this improves the functionality of all your organs. Believe it or not, but chiropractors and acupuncturists, the methodology and the reasoning is sound, because an acupuncturist will stimulate and free up blockages in your nervous system. So acupuncture is mainly a way of manipulating the nervous system and freeing nerve function so that you can get smooth signaling through your nerves. Acupuncture is basically realigning your spine in order to create space between your discs and vertebrae to optimize communication through your gut-brain axis via the vagus nerve. So, and then there's deep tissue massage. Deep tissue massage also helps. So when you have all your muscles tight, you get tight pecs, really tight traps. Usually people who deal with a lot of anxiety have really tight traps, a lot of tightness in the neck, and it's got all of this going on in here, and tightness in the chest, particularly in the pec minor. And the pec minor shortens and brings the shoulders forward. So you get the shoulders rolled forward, and then you get tightness in the chest, which flexes the spine, raises the shoulders, tightens up the back of the neck here. And this is the anxiety posture. And the anxiety posture interferes with the oxygenation of your lungs, which reduces oxygen intake and carbon dioxide release. So you shallow breathing, can't really fully breathe in real deep. You get a shallow voice, makes your voice more high pitched, headaches, poor sleep quality because of the posture, because of this, right? So when you strengthen the muscles in your mid-back, it pulls your shoulders down, lengthens the neck, generates more lat growth here, which loosens up the traps. Because if your lats are weak, then this muscle is not here to be active and pull the shoulders down. Your latissimus dorsi basically runs from the shoulder joint all the way down your back, right? And it pulls your shoulders down like a rubber band. If that's weak, your trapezius take over and pull your shoulders up, right? If your rhomboids and your trapezius in the middle of your back are weak, your chest becomes hyperactive, pulls your shoulders forward. right? So when you got a weak back, this is going to pull your shoulders forward. It's going to, and then you're going to contract in here. If you have weak spinal erectors, you're going to be flexed up here, right? If you have weak glutes, ultimately you put excess stress on your lumbar spine. If you have a compromised lumbar spine, usually you have a compromised thoracic spine, your T-spine in the middle. That can actually negatively infect your gut health, right? You can have gut problems. You can have IBS from this. You can have constipation from this, right? You can get hip impingements and whatnot from this. You can get severe menstrual cycles from this. All types of wacky stuff happens. If your glutes are weak, then your spinal, your hip flexors then become real tight, right? And then when you're sitting all day, it makes your quads real tight, and then eventually this leads to knee pain. So you can end up having bad knees, even though you don't never go to the gym and do no leg exercises. So you just get all negativity going throughout your spine, all the way down to your knees, even to your ankles. Well, I actually learned that when I got certified in corrective exercise. And I had to learn about posture and all of that type of stuff. Right? I had to learn about the kinetic chain. The lordotic curve, the kyphotic curve, and the lordotic curve, and the kyphotic curve. Right? The S curve, right? Your S1, S2, and your sacrum has a kyphotic curve. Your L1 through 5, your lumbar spine, that's your lordotic curve. Your thoracic spine, your T-spine, it's got 12 vertebrae, right? That has a kyphotic curve. And then your C-spine, which has 7 vertebrae, and that has a lordotic curve, right? One of the tricks that we learned in order to remember how many vertebrae are in each part was 7, 12, and 5, which is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You eat dinner at 5, you eat lunch at 12, and you eat breakfast at 7. And that's how we remember the 7, 12, 5 of the lumbar spine. So it was that, and you learn that S-curve thing. Because people will have shoulder pain and neck pain and whatnot, and then that was related to the muscles in their back, and then if they had weak muscles in their back, they also had a weak grip. And then there's also like population data where you can tell like longevity. One through line with people who live the longest is usually they have a strong grip, right? So the strength of your grip can actually, in large part, dictate how long your lifespan will be. So the exercise is important. Diet is necessary, but not sufficient. Do I know anything about plexopathy? I don't know much about that. Plexopathy. Let's look that up. LS plexopathy is an injury to the nerves in the lumbar and or sacral plexus. Plexopathy is not an uncommon condition, but can be difficult to diagnose and manage. However, it is far less common than brachial plexopathy. Patients with LS plexopathy usually present with low back pain and leg pain. Well, now I know the term of it that describes it. So now I know what to call it. Plexopathy. The injury to the nerves, like nerve pain, was referred to as radicular pain. And I remember the term radicular because nerve pain is this crazy burning sensation that I would refer to in my mind as ridiculous pain. So there wasn't a far leap from ridiculous. You know, like when you got to take tests and stuff like that, but when you get tested on this stuff, you remember like certain things like that. What are my thoughts on Dr. Staby's study? Studying him led me to finding you, which I'm grateful for. Sabi had the right idea. Dr. Sabi, you know, his whole thing was about alkalizing the body, right? If you alkalize the body, you reverse any illness. And for the most part, he's correct about that. There's three other points to it, but he focused on the pH level. Usually, if you alkalize your body, that will improve gut health with the gut microbiome, as well as your blood flow and blood quality. I just sound a little bit more technical when I talk about this stuff. But when it comes to alkalizing the body and having an alkaline diet, he had the right idea. He's more or less correct about that. Even with the whole thing like, oh, sea moss, right? Well, why is sea moss such a big deal? And sea moss is such a big deal because it increases oxygenation of the body, right? So when you oxygenate your blood, that helps to reverse illnesses. So pretty much, you know, I don't necessarily agree with 100% of everything he said. I don't really understand some of the things that he says. So Dr. Sabi, the thing that really got me onto Dr. Sabi, where I was like, wow, this guy is amazing, is because of what he did. It's not necessarily so much of what he said. It was what he did one time in a speech. I've talked about this on stream before, but I'll say it again. I was watching a speech he was giving about iron. He said, spinach does not contain iron. I was like, that's weird. It literally contains iron, right? What does he mean by that? I didn't really understand what he meant when he said that, when he was talking about it. He was talking about alkaline and pH balance, and spinach is acidic, and iron cannot be in an acidic environment. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Iron can exist in an acidic environment. I don't know what that means. But in the middle of the speech, what he did was he stopped talking and he dropped to his knees, both of his knees. He went from a fully standing position and he dropped, boom, to his knees. And you can hear his knees hit the stage. This man is 80 plus years old and dropped down, boom, on both knees on a hard surface. And then stood up without the use of his hands. No grimacing, no pain, no nothing. It was like he had bulletproof knees. I've never seen a man over 80 years old have bulletproof knees in that kind of way. And it blew my mind. Right? And that right there is one of the things that always comes to mind when I hear about Dr. Sabi. There's other things that come to mind, but that's one of them, right? Because that was like one of my first, that was probably a first impression for me. Let's see. Shelly Ross, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Let me catch up to y'all in these comments. Exhale 1974, thank you for the 9 roses. Appreciate you. Folks, double tap the screen to like the stream. get the likes up a little bit in the stream. Yeah, that Eat for Your Blood Type lady, she was on like Sunday. She had like over 1,000 viewers in there. I'm like, damn. Her content on her videos is like really low, but her live stream was popping. I'm like, how she get that many views and whatnot in her live stream with her views on her videos that low? TikTok is a funny platform, I'm telling you. But yeah, now I know what people keep asking me about that. Butterfly in the sky. Thank you for the 5 roses. Appreciate you. Yeah. That's right. We get the tapping on that screen. The tiggity tap. So yeah, the root of all, and I keep going back to, I'm going to sound a bit repetitive when I say this, because reversing illnesses really does come down to 3 things. Improving blood flow and blood quality, alkalizing the body and balancing your pH level, and improving and building your gut microbiome. Really, those 3 things is what it takes to reverse any chronic illness. Whatever chronic illness you ask me about, those are going to be the 3 things. Right? So, you improve your blood flow. Strawberries, watermelon, cucumber, beets, leafy green vegetables, mustard greens, berries, kiwis, right? Bell peppers, onions, leeks, right? Nori, seaweed, sea moss, ginger, turmeric, ashwagandha, moringa, matcha. All of these things are going to improve blood flow, blood quality. Alkalizing the body, balancing your pH level, right? Mangoes, pineapple, watermelon, cantaloupe, honeydew, apples, grapes, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, pumpkin seed kernels, chia seeds, flax seeds, flaxseed meal specifically, whole hemp seeds, chickpeas, edamame, soybeans, right? Edamame and soybeans, yeah, kind of same thing. Tofu, right? Mushrooms, mustard greens, bok choy, kale, watercress, spring mix, sweet potato, butternut squash, building your gut health, coconut yogurt, almond yogurt, papayas, mangoes, kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, right? Microgreens, sprouts, Jerusalem artichoke, pretty much any cruciferous dark leafy greens, right? Because that insoluble fiber acts as prebiotics to feed your gut flora. Cacao, moringa, good sleep quality, deep breathing, exercise, aerobic activity, whether it be walking, biking, things of this nature, vitamin D, getting sun exposure. And then crafting a diet plan and a lifestyle around optimizing these 3 things. There's your answer right there. I can explain the techniques, the technical aspects of it. This hormone raises, this one lowers, triggers this, and that triggers that. And I can go through all of that, and it's important to know so you can have a clear understanding and a vivid picture of how it works. But ultimately, when it comes to reversing the illnesses, everything that I just mentioned, that's more or less the basics of it. Now, of course, food volume, food timing, That type of stuff matters too. Should I fast? Should I not fast? Should I increase calories or increase food volume? Should I decrease food volume? Those are the differences that vary from person to person. So when it comes to reversing your specific illness, it really depends. Have you been chronically undereating? Have you been chronically overeating? How many meals have you been eating a day? Have you been exercising? What's your medical history? So the answer will be dependent on those things, because the biggest changes come from the biggest changes. If you want to get something very different, you got to do something very different, right? So, in principle, it's simple. The only thing that can be a little bit complicated is creating the plan. Do I do coaching? Absolutely. You can actually go to my profile right up here. You can tap my picture there, my name, and you go to my profile, give me a follow, hit the link in my bio, and you can request a call. Let's set up a call. We'll talk more about your issues, get your questions answered, and then if you want to move forward with coaching, we could do that as well. I do this full time because what I want to do is I want to help as many people as possible reverse chronic illnesses. That is like my life's mission right now. Helping people to reverse chronic illnesses. I really, really enjoy helping people reverse chronic illnesses. I like to hear the stories. I was feeling terrible. Now I have tons of energy. The weight's moving on the scale. You know, I got people who are members of mine, they check in and they're like, man, I haven't had this amount of energy in the last 12 years. I love hearing that. For the first time in 15 years, I'm losing weight on the scale. I haven't been able to do that in Lord knows how long. I've been on insulin and metformin for over 10 years. And now finally I'm going to be able to get off my medication. They've cut my medication by 3/4. Right? I've been on thyroid medication for the last 12 years. And now I went back to my doctor and they told me at this rate I'll be able to get off of it entirely. My thyroid levels are almost back to normal now. I only take my thyroid hormone now. I only take my levothyroxine once a week. But once every 3 days. Sometimes I forget to take it. I like it. I love the progress. Had people reverse food allergies. I used to not be able to eat anything. Now I have all this dietary freedom and I can finally eat and feel comfortable without breaking out in hives and rashes. Having diabetics where they're like, I remember when just getting my blood sugar down below 200 after eating was impossible. Now if my blood sugar hits 170, I'm nervous because I'm so used to my blood sugar being around the 110s, the 120s. Right? Change will happen quick. You get the right plan, you execute the plan, the results come quick, they come day by day. I had a guy come on recently, enlarged prostate, kidney problems, massive weight loss. Now he's on the uptrend. No more pain from enlarged prostate. Having way more energy, working out, building muscle, gaining muscle mass. I do video calls with my people, right? We do video calls and I do daily coaching support. The first call that I had with him, his face, he was horrified. He was deeply worried. You could see the anxiety on his face. By the third time I talked to him, the second time, because he went through a full week. And I talked to him. We got on a video call a week later. No, it was the third time, because the first time was he got on me for the original call. Then he signed up for the coaching. We got on a follow-up call. And then the next week, we got on the second official coaching call. And after a week of him being on the plan, he's smiling. He's radiant. You can see the anxiety left his face. He feels confident. He's flexing on camera. He's feeling good. I love it. I really enjoy seeing people win. All of the illnesses, the chronic conditions that doctors tell people they can't reverse, they can't do anything about it, they'll have to live with it for the rest of their life. I want to prove that's not true. That is my mission statement. You can reverse any chronic illness with the triad of human health. Full stop. I stand by that. And I've got a real good track record with that. And I will be spending the next 10, 20, however many years I got, reinforcing and continuing to prove that point. And that's what I'm doing full time, folks. Trust, thank you for the rose. Appreciate you. That's right. Tap the screen to like the stream. True. Big shout out, Exhale 1974. Do I eat vegetables as well? Of course. I follow a full spectrum approach. It's just that most of my food is raw. That's all. How many people have I helped? I don't know. It's been a few hundred. That's not even including the people who haven't even worked with me. They just watch my content and then do the things that I say on my streams. Gigi coming through with the love on the stream. Thank you for the weights and the mini speakers. User 23957062530. Thank you for the roses. Appreciate you. We got to read out the whole serial number. Got to read it out. Coach is the real deal, man. A1C from 7.8 to 6.7. Here we go. And we're going to continue to improve on that. Am I vegetarian? No, I'm vegan. I don't eat anything that comes from an animal. Hello, good brother watching from Philly. What's going on? Welcome. Good to see you in here. So do you believe that our ancestors were naturally plant-based eaters only during ancient times? I wouldn't say only plant-based eaters. Mostly plant-based, yeah. The overwhelming majority of the food was plant-based, yeah. I mean, meat is not really that accessible otherwise. Well, that's pretty much it for me tonight, folks. I want to try to get to bed at a decent time. But yeah, Thursday I'll be back on for another Q&A. And I got to figure out the pivot to the YouTube live streams. I might do. Matter of fact, put a 1 in the chat if you would tune into my live streams on YouTube. So if I did, let's say if I did a Thursday live stream on YouTube instead of TikTok, put a 1 in the chat if you would watch it on YouTube. Oh, we see some 1s in here now. Because I'm probably gonna do, because I might do 3 streams a week, but I might do a Saturday live stream. So I might do that. Some people like TikTok only. I'll still do TikTok, but I think I would probably do TikTok and YouTube. So I just got to add the stream. So it's just a matter of figuring out the schedule. So, so I do coaching calls. I'm doing the live streams, and then I do interviews with people. So we're doing a lot of communicating, doing a lot of chatting and talking, a lot of chit-chatting. But yeah, I might do the Thursday stream as a YouTube stream. I might start doing that. And I think what I'll do is I'll probably simulcast. So I'll do the TikTok live stream on my phone and stream on my YouTube channel, and basically just tell the TikTok folks to jump in and watch on the YouTube. I might do that. We'll see. I gotta figure that out. And then I'll go back to the YouTube review. So if I do YouTube, I can do the video reviews, the react videos to the carnivore MDs and the blood type diet stuff, and kind of give my thoughts on those and do like a live review, react stream kind of deal, in a Q&A. Oh, you said you purchased a session with me on the call? Let's take a look. Okay, gotcha. I see it. I see it. All right. So yeah, we're meeting on Google Meet, right? So you should have gotten the link to the call in your email. You should have gotten a link to the call in your email, so that and we'll be all set there. Let me check the time here. So yeah, we're all set. You locked in your time. And you're in here for Saturday, right? Okay, I got it. You got an email? Okay, gotcha. Oh, yeah, so we're all set. So we got you in here for Saturday, so I look forward to talking to you on Saturday. And that be that. All right, folks. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and coming to hang out with me. As always, I hope the stream was valuable for you. You have some information to take home here and start operating on, start working on immediately, implementing some of this stuff. Yeah, and let's keep it going, right? We got work to do. We got steps to take on the journey. And I'm excited for you all. So having said that, I will catch y'all on the next live stream Thursday. And I'll put an update for what I'm going to do with it either Wednesday or Thursday on my profile there. Have a good night, folks.